Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez here along with
Doug.
As far as the numbering system, we'll catch up to it, trust me. If you're keeping track, it's on the episode title. We'll go from there. On this episode, we talk about, well, the good fortune that Doug has recently run into. Thankfully, landed a new gig. So once again, Doug, congratulations.
Thank you.
We also talk about... this is a weird one. I wasn't expecting to talk about this one tonight. Local, or I should say state and federal laws regarding marijuana and what happens when you go for a drug test in a state where they say that recreational use is allowed. We get into some of the gray area with that, and we spend more time on that one than I was expecting to. So, well, we'll see how that one pans out, and for the listeners, let us know. Email, drop a comment, whatever the case is, on your thoughts on that one, because that's a very interesting topic. We also talk about The Iron Claw, which has recently hit streaming on HBO Max. I watched it finally, and I was very intrigued by it. So if you don't know it, it's the story of the Von Erich family in the world of professional wrestling. The Von Erich curse is played up very, very heavily, and it's a very interesting film. I believe it was from A24. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend it, whether you're a wrestling fan or not. I think it's a great story. It's a very heartbreaking story, but a great one nonetheless. So check that one out. Doug also went to the movies recently and watched, what was the name of the film again?
In a Violent Nature.
And he had his thoughts. Do you want to talk?
Even the title is clunky for that.
It is. Every time that you've told me the title, I'm like, that just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. But who knows? I mean, it might become a popular franchise. It might be the beginning of something. Doug has his thoughts, and he shares them with us on the episode. And then somehow, it was my fault. I'll take full credit for this one. Goat and Your Mom makes another appearance as far as commentary when we talk about weird things and things that can, happen. Goat and Your Mom. Go look it up. At your own peril, at your own... Be forewarned. Let's put it that way. Not safe for work. Check it out. We do know it's at Apple Music because I just looked it up at the end of the show, and it just makes me happy that it's out there in some shape or form on streaming music. But definitely a silly one, and don't look up the video, or look up the video. Your choice. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the various different sections out there: comic books, movies, TV, wrestling. You can also find the show over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com, where the show is directly uploaded. Check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are also on Spotify. So check us out. Let us know what's going on. Drop comments, share, follow, whatever the case is. Let us know that you're out there. Let us know that you're listening. I will say that recently the Facebook fan page has gotten a little bit of a bump, more than usual, which makes me very happy because the page is usually quiet, but I know people are listening and downloading. So thank you, everybody, for the social interactions for that. That's always good to see. And then again, always, if anybody has any comments or feedbacks or stories, rabblecast@gmail.com. Let us know what's going on. It's always fun to hear from everybody, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, anything to add, sir?
Absolutely not.
All right. Let's get on with it. Enjoy the show.
And we're back on the Rabblecast. How are you, man?
I'm tired. The weather around here is, I'm so tired I can't think of a metaphor.
Shit.
Yeah. No, it's not horrible. It's just that if anybody's complaining about the weather now, as far as like, oh, it's too hot or it's too humid, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem.
The summer hasn't even started officially.
Mm-hmm.
And people, at least people that I know of, are complaining a little bit, saying, "Oh, I can't believe it's getting so humid out here, or it's getting so muggy." I'm like, it rained today, and it got a little more humid than usual. But if you can't take it now, once we hit like July, and you're like sweltering, forget about it. You're gonna be done. So, but I can't complain. Usual stuff's going on. I'm trying to, once again, trying to make every day better than the last. Trying to avoid negativity on different ends, and just trying to stay focused and well-minded, I guess you can say. I'm losing words. I'm lacking words. How about you, friend?
Tired, but since I last talked to you, I got a new job.
No shit.
Yep.
Are you the newest associate at S-Mart?
No, nothing like that. No, I got a call Friday morning. The one recruiter I've been working with, he was like, "Hey, I found a contract position for you. It's a 6-month contract at a healthcare place." I'm like, "Well, what's the work?" And he said that they got some fixed asset projects that they need someone working on. I said, "I've never really done that before, and I'm looking for anything to get me out of my current place. So what's the score here?" Had the interview on Monday. They liked me enough where they pretty much said, they pretty much I had the interview at 11 a.m. We were done at 11:30, and I got a text at like 1 p.m. saying, "Yeah, they want to hire you."
Nice.
So, yeah, it went pretty quick. Still ironing out all the other nonsense. Got to go get fingerprinted, got to get my blood tested, got to get my drug test done, got to figure out what immunizations I need, got to get my background check done, and about 9 other things.
Wow, for a job? Sounds like you're buying a gun all over again.
Well, the funny thing is, it's drug test, that's fine. Immunization, it's a health.
I can see that.
It's a healthcare company, I get that. Then they said, "Oh, we want you to get it's like, oh, they want you to go for a background or a fingerprinted," and I said, "Really?" And they said, "That's how the healthcare companies do." So I was like, "Well, as long as somebody else is paying for it, you're going to find nothing. So who gives a shit?" So that's fine, whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there we go.
Let me ask you something, because this is something that's come up in conversations with other friends. So, the state of New Jersey now allows marijuana recreationally.
Uh-huh.
You no longer just need a medical license to get weed, whether it's, smoke, edible, or other.
Mm-hmm.
If you go for a drug test, well, all right, so first I should ask you, is PA the same way? Do you know?
What?
As far as recreational use for marijuana?
Recreational use is not allowed. It's a medical only state.
Wow. Okay. So
there's a reason it's called Pennsylvania.
Fair enough. Okay. So then let's just keep New Jersey as the focus of this question. Then, if you're going to go for a drug test and you live in a state that it is legal by state, so local state laws, but still obviously federally it's illegal. When you go for a drug test, can they pop you if you partake, or is that something they have to gloss over now?
It's completely the company's discretion. They can choose if they want to ignore it or if they want to not move ahead with dealing with somebody because of it.
It sounds like such a gray area, though, the way it's set up, because I've seen job listings, and I've gone through my fair share recently, where it'll say, yes, they drug test, but they don't tell you what they're drug testing for. I've seen certain listings say if it's a safety concerned role. So if you're in charge of, making sure the maintenance on a semi that's going to be running across country is tip top, so that it'll make the drive or the trek across. I can see that they want to make sure that you're focused, you're sober, and that you're able to get the job done in a timely manner. I can understand a safety issue being a concern. Like if you're a conductor on a train or a bus driver, stuff like that, you need to be sober. You're not going to get drunk, let's say, and then go to do your job. That I can understand where they're like, okay, we're going to test for drugs. But if you're working, let's say, a parts counter, and they say, hey, we're going to do a drug test on you. Sure, let's do a drug test. Oh, we find that you've popped for marijuana. I don't know if they can tell which type, but just in general, you have THC in your system. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, it's legal recreationally. It's the same as going out to a bar and getting a drink. I was drunk then. I am not now. Are you going to hold that against me as far as the job is concerned? If somebody has a weekend where they say, hey, I'm going to go watch a concert or I'm going to go take in a show. Hey, you want some weed? Sure. You have some, whatever the case is. But then you go for the job interview 4 or 5 days later. You take the drug test. It comes back a couple weeks later. Like, oh, you're positive for marijuana. Yeah. Then. So that's my question is like, how stringent is it nowadays? And just like, is the gray area there for the benefit of the employer? Or can the potential employee make an argument? What do you think?
It's strictly, you're at number one, you're asking the wrong guy. I never sat down and looked into this, but here's one thing I can tell you. Most jobs in this day and age, are you familiar with the concept of at-will employment?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If they decide that, company policy can be whatever they set it as, they can decide whether or not they want, if they're okay with their people using marijuana, then they can pass on it. If not, no. It's every company's kind of figuring this one out as they go. And I think, who was the first one to do recreational? Was it Colorado, I believe?
Some years ago. Yeah. That sounds like it.
Yeah, I don't know. Go Google up how they do stuff or whatever. I don't know. This is one of those areas where it's probably going to be a little bit more squirrely, mainly because of the fact that it's interesting in that I was reading somewhere. I think alcohol is in and out of your system relatively quickly.
Yep.
Cocaine's out of your system pretty quickly. Even methamphetamines are out of your system pretty quickly, but marijuana can linger. Why that is, I do not know. I think it has to do with some of the ways it bonds with fat molecules. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a chemist.
Yeah, no, it comes down to how it metabolizes. But you're correct. Yeah. The other three that you mentioned first, you take them, you have a good time, whatever your circumstance is, but they leave your system pretty quickly to the point where if you take a test, you won't pop positive for it. But depending on the test, because here's the other thing, depending on the test, if you do a urine test, I believe it's 2 weeks for Delta 8, which is the synthetic version of THC. It's 4 weeks for regular THC. But if they do a hair test, a hair sample, so if they pluck a hair off the top of your head and they test the follicle, then they can actually catch you past the 4 weeks, because that stays longer in your system that way, which is a weird little science thing.
So I've heard.
Yeah, I'm finding it more and more interesting because especially now in this state, there are 2 dispensaries that I know of. I know there are more, but there's one not too far from where we are, a couple towns over. And then when I go to visit our brother out down 22, we drive past another one on the way there. And I'm like, how? Okay, so if we have a dispensaries, how stringent are the rules? But then I also remember that one Vice documentary, again, Colorado, where people are coming in, they're buying whatever they're picking up, medical or otherwise, or just recreational. Whether it's, I don't know if it's a strictly cash business, but I do know that certain banks will get declined if you try to use your card at dispensaries. So much so that they have like ATMs commonplace inside, so you can come and just grab some cash real quick, whatever the case is. But I remember when they say that they would be finished with business. So like any other business, at the end of the day, you total up your money, you put it in the bag. And I imagine it's more cash on hand because of the type of business, that they had to then get an armored car and an escort of former military, pretty much mercenaries, who would then escort the money, taking different routes to a bank, if the bank would let them deposit the money, knowing the nature of the business, or to a safe house type of location so they can store their funds and not have to worry about getting hit by people who might be a little too overzealous or greedy that they think they can get away with knocking over a dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it funny that even though by state laws now we are legal, and there's a lot of people that I know that are enjoying it, and a lot of people who are, you know, thankfully it's a great thing for them because they can finally do it without having to worry about getting pulled over or getting in trouble, whatever the case is. But work-wise, it's still a gray area, and it's kind of funny the way it works that way. But then there was a video that I saw, like one of those dash cam channels on YouTube.
Okay.
Some lady who was traveling, I want to say it was like New Mexico. And I believe it may or may not be New Mexico, but the state she was traveling through, the local law for the state, it was legal for weed, but federally still illegal as usual. And the guy that pulled her over just happened to be a Department of Homeland Security officer. So the laws that he obeys are different than, let's say, a state trooper or local PD. So because he's a federal police officer, he could bust you for marijuana, which they had in the car. So I find that really interesting. Like, oh, just by chance you got the one federal agent that's wandering the roads and happens to pull you over for something different, but they can pop you for it and they can search your car because of it. I'm like, wow, that's just a catch-22 right there. It seems like it's designed to catch you.
Well, it's interesting too because the Department of Homeland Security, if I remember correctly, they are a federal agency, and they have restrictions of any location. If it's within 100 miles of any of our borders, they have jurisdiction.
Yes.
Where I've seen somebody work that up on a map once, and that covers the vast majority of the country. I think like 70 to 75% of the country.
Oh, yeah,
because if you think about borders include the shore.
Mm-hmm.
So think about any location you can think of that is not within 100 miles of the border with Canada, the border with Mexico, or an ocean. That's not a lot of the country, mainly the interior and the Midwest and whatnot, and parts of the West. So they have jurisdiction to do whatever they want there. I always found it, I'm actually kind of surprised that they would bust somebody. I feel like they got bigger things to worry about than cannabis.
No, absolutely. Like I said, I think they had pulled him over for some other infraction, but because when they got the I don't even know how you want to refer to it as, once they got the person pulled over, the traffic stop, let's say, mm-hmm. Once the person was off to the side and they're at their window, they can smell something. Now they are quote unquote trained for certain situations, and they told them through the dash cam footage that you see of this, that because they are a federal agent, they can take this a step further. And the person's like, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. It's state law states that it's legal. And the agent is trying to explain, yes, it is legal. You are correct. But because I am federal, this is a whole different set of circumstances. Now you are breaking federal law. I'm allowed to search your car. And they like at multiple times like, no, you can't do that. And like, stop. Like, let's get your boss down here. Let's get a supervisor. Like, we can do that. No problem. But understand, you are no longer playing at local level, state level. You are playing federal level because I am a federal agent. I'm like, wow, that just seems... And you're right. You would think that they would have bigger fish to fry. So what the infraction was, I don't remember off the top of my head. But just the weird incident of that happening. Like, you can get pulled over by local PD. You can get pulled over by a state trooper, and they abide by those laws. But the off chance to catch a federal agent, it's just like, well, okay. It's like if the FBI comes, busting down your door. And like, whoa, 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 where's your badge? And like, I'm FBI, different story. Here's a warrant, whatever the case is. I would hope they would have a reason to bust your door down if it's the FBI. But again, different circumstances and everything else. But I was like, wow, that's just, it seems so backwards now. With states being able to legalize it, which is great because a lot of states just say, yeah, sure, we'll put dispensaries in. Yeah, sure, we'll tax the hell out of it. Yeah, all that revenue comes back to us. Good for them. They're cashing in. They're getting what's going on. They're also accepting the possibility of people being high, in public, people being high while driving. Those are other unfortunate side effects of legalizing marijuana in your township or your neighborhood, whatever the case is. But the fact that there's still so many places that are holding out, federally, it's still illegal. And even though now there's talk of rescheduling marijuana altogether, but the downside of that, people are saying that if they reschedule it to a lesser extent than what it currently is, then they might be putting the screws even tighter to people who run dispensaries. So like, you have to be on point, dot your I's, cross your T's when it comes to your sales, your income, your inventory, because if you slip up by like just one little thing, it's possible they can take away whatever license they gave you to sell, to operate that business. Mm-hmm. So I hear that a lot of dispensary owners, managers, whatever the case is, are really, 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 hard ass because they have to be. It's not like a happy-go-lucky, even though you think a business where you help people get high, like they are more rule driven by the industry at this point, because they have to make sure that they set an example. They play by the book. Otherwise, federally, if the government decides, hey, this dispensary is making a lot of noise in this state, we should probably go pay them a visit, they could easily come in, raid you, take your inventory, take your money, and then you're just like screwed for the next few days until you can scrouge up some type of inventory or scrouge up some type of capital to continue operating. It's weird how like the government can still fuck you on this one, even though you're trying to help people. All right, I know. As I said it.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, I mean,
about I think it was 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, there was some video floating around from California. It was a dispensary. I don't even think it was I think it was recreational. I think it was a medicinal dispensary. So they were dealing in cash, and they got raided by, I believe it was I believe it was either county or state authorities. They came in, and the funny part is, they went in there, they disabled the video cameras, but they missed one. So one of the video cameras actually recorded what the officers did in there.
Oh boy! And
the problem was, number one is they seized because it was cash business. And they even pay their using cash because they can't cut checks because they can't get bank accounts.
Oh, wow.
They seized all the cash. They seized a bunch of other stuff, some different documents, and they seized a whole bunch of cannabis. And it also showed them a couple of the law enforcement officers were also seen actually eating some of the edibles.
On duty, no less.
On duty. Well, and the funny thing is, too, with a lot of it, it didn't matter what they were doing, because on top of that, are you familiar with the concept of civil asset forfeiture?
Say that one more time.
Civil asset forfeiture?
I've heard the term. I'm not entirely familiar with it, what it entails.
Okay, I'll walk you through this one. Civil asset forfeiture. This was a concept that was originally come up with, I think it was in either the 70s or 80s. Basically what it did is, and I'm not going to have the details, it's been a while since I read up on it, but the high points of it are, effectively, if it was designed for if they stop big-time drug traffickers, it makes it very easy for them to seize their property. So it's like, okay, we arrested you for this. Okay, we're going to take your house. We're going to take your cars. We're going to take your boats. We're going to take your RVs. We're going to take your this. We're going to take whatever you got in terms of that, and then we're going to use it. We're either going to use it for, we're going to use it ourselves, or we're going to sell it off and we're going to use the profits for whatever we have to in terms of to fund our agencies.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is with this is, number one, because it's a civil asset, because it's a civil item, it's technically you're not, even if you haven't been arrested, law enforcement can seize your property if they suspect it has been used in the crime. And because of some Weasley language in how the laws were written, it is your responsibility to prove that it is not illegally gotten gains, or it wasn't going to be used for anything illegal. I can't. If you go start looking around of different stories of people basically traveling somewhere to buy a large ticket item in cash, which it's completely legal to do, like buy a car in cash or something like that, they get stopped by the cops search them, and they say, well, why do you have $25,000 in cash?
It was a good day.
People say, yeah, and that's the thing. Number one, they can say that's not your business, or they can say, hey, I'm going to buy a car. I do remember one distinct video where it was two guys who were actually driving across country on their way to, I believe they're going to like a poker tournament out in Las Vegas. And they said, that's our money for the tournament. And honest to God, in a lot of those cases, the police will then say, well, I suspect this is going to be used, used to buy drugs, or it's going to be used to buy something illegal, so we're seizing it.
Fuck.
And what you'd have to do is you'd have to then go back to that jurisdiction, go back to that police department, and basically say, it's like, I want my property back. And then they say, well, then you have to prove that it wasn't being used for anything illegal. I've actually heard quite a few interviews with law enforcement, with legal experts or attorneys who have said, basically, they've even figured out if the amount of property or money seized was under like a certain threshold, they said, don't even waste your time. It's going to cost you this much, pretty much around this much money to get this property back.
Yeah.
So unless it's higher than that, you're going to you're going to have a net loss. And it's not that it wasn't. It was like $400 or $500, I think they said, and this was a couple of years ago. So who knows if that's going to change up somewhere down the line. Of course, this has what started, as we all know, the road to hell is paved with best of intentions. So something that started out with, this is a great way to help us, fight back to like some of the drug kingpins of the 1980s and the big time drug traffickers. But it turned into a shit show, of course. It's been used for quite a few really, really awful abuses. If you want to get more information, or if any of the listeners do, if you're familiar with John Oliver, who does the show Last Week Tonight on HBO, and he's been doing it for quite some years now. Mm-hmm. He did an excellent breakdown of civil asset forfeiture some years ago on one of the shows. It was like a half-hour-long article on just how fucked up it is. So,
yeah, I mean, that in and of itself is a gray area, because if you try to do accounting for that, like, okay, they take $25,000 off of somebody, or they take a high-end sports vehicle, or they take some kind of like, high-valued property. If they do sell that off, okay, let's say they got X amount of dollars for it. Where does the money go? Then trying to track... it
goes to that agency.
Yeah, but where, like, how is that agency then using it?
Whatever they want to. It's part of their operating budget.
So if the captain wants to suddenly get a $10,000 bonus for his latest seizures or latest collars, let's say, whatever the case is, is that justified? That's where it becomes like a little weird. What happens to the money? Like, I know it's... Well,
then I'm going to go on a limb. It's whatever the other rules of the that agency's budget, it would probably just fall under the portents of that. So
yeah, it's I was never entirely comfortable with that term as far as seizure of somebody else's property. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that don't take away the bad guys' money, don't take away the bad guys' cars. No, absolutely. If this is indeed a situation where the bad guys are getting caught and they're being hamstringed as far as their operations, sure, why not? But we've seen it, we've heard it, it's been depicted in TV and movies where the bad guys could be a corrupt cop. And that corrupt cop could say, I'm going to seize this asset, and then that asset just doesn't go where it's supposed to, or just never gets accounted for in the books and just disappears. Whether it's money, whether it's contraband, or anything else.
It doesn't matter if it's not being reported, because in a lot of these agencies, if they don't even have decent oversight, if if you're talking about like podunk fucking police department in some small shit ass town,
Yep.
who the fuck cares? They don't.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The fucking probably the local mayor doesn't give a fuck either. They're going to do whatever the hell they want anyway. I believe one of the more egregious examples I read was they got a call for a house, and it was some type of a house call, or it was some type of a domestic disturbance. Police got called to it. One of the items they seized was like it was either one of those like chilled Jägermeister machines, or it was some type of a margarita machine, something that makes them like super fast. And the police basically said, like, we suspect this is being used to furnish alcohol to minors, so they seized it. And somebody at the police department took it and fucking basically was like, "Oh, this is gonna go great in my fucking in my party room."
Oh fuck.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think, especially down south, it's very prevalent where there'll be a lot of like little townships and villages and municipalities where if they're near a major highway, they'll do whatever they can to actually get a piece of the highway incorporated into the boundaries of that town, because then that means, guess what? That local police department now has one of the easiest revenue streams in the world, because, okay, if you are out patrolling or otherwise, you got some time to kill, just go sit on the highway and watch for speeders. Or even better, they're also notorious for the unspoken rule of, oh, if you see out of plates, pull them over, shake them down, or not so much shake them down, but check them out. Because in a lot of cases, if they're going to a different state or something like that, if you get them for something minor, they're just going to pay the ticket and move on. Or if they didn't actually break any laws and you find, well, cash your assets on them, you can say it's like, well, we suspect this is a drug deal. We're taking it, and you're going to have to go. You're going to incur the extra cost of having to travel back here to come back and fight it in our court. So. Yeah, it's dirty as shit. In fact, it's basically an extra revenue stream for a lot of these small towns.
Yeah, I can see that being the case. So that's where things get frustrating to me. I mean, that's where, you know, the debate of do you support law enforcement or not? I'm like, yes, don't get me wrong, we need good cops out there. And when I say good cops, I mean people who are willing to do the job. It's a thankless job, but one bad apple can, and more than often, spoils the bunch, and then from there things just go sideways, and that's where you get these precincts or departments or groups that just decide, oh, you know, we can get away with this because by law we can claim this, we can claim that, and from there they can just benefit for their for themselves. At that point, that's where it gets kind of dicey, and that's where people get frustrated, and that unfortunately then just proliferates and covers the entire idea of a police squad. So at that point, like, oh, all cops are bad. No, not all cops. That's why they call it, the thin blue line. There is something there that is to be adhered to. But especially, again, TV and movies have sensationalized it so much that now the idea of corrupt cops, like, oh, they're everywhere. I'm like, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're spread throughout. And I'm not saying they're all working together, but you have people out there, and it's human nature. Let's face it. If there's a large sum of money out there and you want it that badly, but you can't get your hands on it, but for some weird reason, there's like a twist in the law that allows you to say, oh, I'm going to seize this for such and such, then yeah, I can see human nature taking over. Like, oh man, I'm going to take this $10,000 and take the wife out, or I'm going to build my kid something, or I'm going to take myself out to the titty bar, whatever the case is. You know, all these different things that can happen. But again, we're talking the possibility, hopefully not the eventuality of something like this happening especially when it comes to dispensaries. So, I don't know. It just, especially now, as trying to navigate the landscape when it comes to job searches. I've been exposed to now like little AIs. So when you fill out your information, you put your profile out there, they'll send you an email, they'll send you a text message. We saw this, and he might be a good fit for you. Going through a keyword search. So it's a little bit different nowadays than it used to be when you speak to somebody directly. You're fortunate that you got somebody who called you up, said, come on in, let's talk, blah, blah, blah. And then from there, you can actually have a one-on-one conversation. And if all goes well, in your case, then you can land the job and hopefully start a new chapter when it comes to your work experience. But right now, with everything else that's going on, it seems like it's a little bit more automated, I guess is the best way to put it, being that AI is involved. Because now it's not as easily as it used to be. Now it's if you put in your information, you trigger other sites and like, oh, we saw your profile on this, or we saw your resume on that. We like to get into contact with you. And then once again, you're filling out more information and everything else. And even though you send in your resume, they're like, can you give us an idea of your work experience? I just did. But once again, they want more information, more information, more information. You are a data point. You are valuable in that respect, and they'll just plug you into their system. And hopefully, if they help you find a job, then they'll get a cut of it. If not, then they'll just keep recommending things left and right. So it's a weird thing. So at the very least, let me say congratulations on landing the new gig. Hopefully, it all goes well. Do you have a start date in mind, or do they?
We're still parsing that one out, but it'll probably be towards the end of June.
Gotcha. Are you still currently at the other place?
Yeah, I'm going to stick around there until I wrap up. I'd love nothing more than to take a week off, but my current employers even asked me, it's like, could you possibly stay till like the second week of July? And I'm like, that's a little much. I'm sorry, we're already shorthanded, but you're going to deal with it.
Ain't your problem.
No, but here's the thing, like for the leadership of the company, it's their problem. The problem is the accounting manager, who I really like, and she's been a great boss. She's the one who's going to get it the worst. So that's why I'm kind of like, no, I want to help her out. I'm helping her out in spite of the executive leadership.
No, I got you. Yeah, it's unfortunately that's what the give and take of it. But at the very least, again, trying to avoid the negativity and focus on the positivity. You got a new gig. I'm very happy for you, dude. That's awesome. So I hope that all works out. And once they get the details ironed out, then hopefully you can make your moves. If you get that extra week, cool. If not, then settle into the new place and hopefully it all goes smoothly and go from there.
Yeah, I'll take all the negativity you got. I am negative.
You're gonna get a small office, fucking paper stacked to the ceiling, no days off. You're fucked.
No, not negativity like that. I hate when people are like, oh, positive vibes only. I was like, that's not life, motherfucker.
No, I'm not saying positive vibes only. You make a good point. That's thank you for saying that. I had a conversation with a friend recently, as of last night, who when I saw their life, let's say, their interactions on social media, I always loved what they did because they always go out, they have adventures, they're always going to concerts and shows. I'm like, wow, that's you must be very, very busy and happy, and just it seems like you have a lot of stuff going on. And then when I spoke to them, they're like, that's all deflection, dude. Like I put that out there because I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I try to keep busy so I don't go crazy when I'm at home, but I'm near broke. I've got a bunch of other stuff going on, weird situations. They're a business owner, so I was like, all right, well, if anything, I appreciate you being completely honest with it. And they're like, look, I have a lot of people who don't like me because of the stuff that I've done in the past and because of the decisions I've made. Haters, for lack of a better term. Part of the reason I put all that stuff up there, they said, is because if they are still watching me, if they are still, keeping an eye out, then I would love nothing more for them to see me succeed. And if that's the case, fuck them. But when I even said, I'm like, I see your life through the lens of Facebook, and it seems like you're doing well. I'm like, no. I am. Thank you for that, but I'm taking the good with the bad. So that is life. Like that right there. You've got to deal with it. You've got to make sure that you mitigate whatever's going on and try to keep pushing forward. It's not easy. It's never easy. It might have been easier when we were younger, less responsibilities, less to do. But now, especially as we're getting older, it's like, fuck, man, the weight of the world sometimes can be crushing. And there's not really much you can do. Right? It's you got to push forward. So yes, I say, focus on the positivity only because I'm going to try to steer that way. There's enough negative shit out there. Yes, it's going to come into your life. It's going to creep in here and there. But I like to try to make sure that if we're going to have a conversation, let's have fun. Let's talk about the cool stuff. Let's talk about the fun stuff. But if we could have a conversation about all the shitty stuff. Sure, why not? We'll go there as well. And then hopefully we can learn something from it, at the very least. But, yeah, take the good with the bad. And that's the facts of life. Sorry.
There you go.
I couldn't have... I couldn't just resist the opportunity for that one. Speaking of good things, or at least positivity, I was able to watch recently on HBO Max Iron Claw, the Von Erich, the Iron Claw, the Von Erich story.
Got ya.
Sorry, I when I said the title, it just sounded kind of weird, the way it rolled off the tongue. Yes, the Iron Claw. I can't remember who directed it off the top of my head, but it's the one with Zac Efron plays one of the Von Erichs, and you've got a bunch of other prominent names in there. I can't recall off the top of my head because, of course, I don't have the information in front of me. But it came out it came out at the end of last year in December.
Yes.
I was waiting for it to show up, and then out of nowhere, it popped up on Max. So, like, all right, let me sit down and start watching this. I got a little interrupted the first time I was watching it, so I had to go back and like restart a few scenes. But it tells the tale, and I know we talked about it initially when the movie was announced, of the Von Erich family, and they play up the idea of the Von Erich curse very much in the film.
Yes.
Have you seen this at all, by chance?
I have not seen it yet. I'm hoping to get there soon, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Okay. Once again, when it comes to the Von Erichs, if you're a wrestling fan, you know the story. It's a very tragic story of a family that's very prominent in the world of wrestling. But for whatever reason, if you want to believe it's a curse, if you want to believe it's just, bad choices or the business, their family is decimated by many, many deaths. And one could say it's probably brought on by the wrestling world and everything that it entails. Zac Efron plays, I believe it's Kevin Von Erich. And
sounds about right.
When you see him in the film, I did not look it up because I almost don't want to know. But one, he's jacked. Like, he's in ridiculous shape for this movie. If you remember him from his, I think it was like high school musical days for Disney, or whatever other rom-com kids movies he did when he was younger, or teen movies, he's always a pretty boy. He's always good looking. Easily, you can see why he's being cast in all those films, because he's attractive. When you see him in this film, he is jacked. His face looks a little different, so I don't know if they used any kind of makeup or prosthetics on him to change his appearance slightly. But he looks a little bit more, I guess you can just say muscle bound, as far as his face is concerned. His chin is just a blocky chin. His face is wider. I don't know if it's because of the workout routine he was on, but he definitely looks different. They play up the whole angle of the Von Erich family, the rise of each of the brothers, the opportunities that every one of them has, the way that Fritz Von Erich, the father, pushes them. It's very telling where in every scene where they get together for a family reunion, or whether they haven't seen each other in a while, the first thing the father says is, it's not like, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, great to see you. The first thing he brings up is wrestling immediately. Oh, NWA has a chance to really flourish, and they're talking about your name. I'm like, okay. Hi, Dad. How's it going? But I watched the whole film, and again, I was actually expecting it to be a little bit more depressing and darker than it was, to be honest. Again, knowing the story of the Von Erichs. This is, I would say spoilers, but again, if you don't know the Von Erich story, you don't follow wrestling, whatever the case is, just about the entire family just gets, in one way or another, decimated. I'm trying to remember the first Von Erich who passes. Well, actually, the very first one is the younger brother. Oldest brother, but he died when he was younger, drowned by falling into some water, and it was a very tragic story of a little boy who just got hurt, and that's when they were talking about, oh, it's the Von Erich curse, blah blah blah.
Yeah, he was electrocuted, and then he was stunned where he landed in that puddle, and he drowned. So it was, that was when they weren't living in Texas. They were somewhere in the upper Midwest, I think, at the time. And then after that, Fritz moved him and his wife back down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I believe.
They briefly touch upon it. They don't tell you exactly what happens to the little boy in the film, but the little boy is brought up, and you see him in photographs. When you go through, was it David Von Erich was the next one?
Yeah, David Von Erich, the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Is working his butt off, going out there, doing matches, making appearances, is, making his dad proud, make the family proud. Goes to Japan, and unfortunately they find him dead in his hotel room.
Yes.
And there was like a ruptured intestine, they were saying. There's a scene between David and Kevin Von Erich where Kevin's trying to tell him, I don't think you should go. You look really messed up. He's in a bathroom stall throwing up, but when he's throwing up, it's nothing but blood. You're like, oh shit, like this is, I don't know if he took a bad hit or he just got injured and just is ignoring it, whatever the case is. But it was always those things like, never a day off, always out there, always doing it. And unfortunately, because he didn't seek medical attention when he probably should have, was taken out. Again, whether you want to call bad decisions, bad lifestyle choices, whatever the case is, or it's a curse, we'll see. Then from there, was it Carrie who was next? I'm trying to remember the order that it all took place in, because it was David, Carrie, then I believe it was Mike. Am I correct?
And then Chris. Yeah, I think you're right. I might be mixing up Carrie and Mike, but yeah, they both went. Because I definitely remember Carrie Von Erich was 1993. I can't remember when Mike Von Erich died.
Well, you've got the two with Carrie, where Carrie initially gets into an accident, which costs him his foot. That was a whole ordeal. And then for him to try to get back in the ring, get back into, at a level that he could be comfortable doing it with a boot on. Not just a wrestling boot. He literally has to have a boot onto it so he can actually compete in the ring at this point, which is, just unfortunate. But, people have done it. People with handicaps have gone into the wrestling ring and have been able to have careers. But, again, because of the notoriety of the family, it was a little bit harder and more eyes on him at that point. So he gets injured, and then Mike suffers a weird shoulder injury, goes into the hospital. They have to do an operation while he's under. He suffers some sort of shock, some like bacteria or something, where he essentially goes into a coma. And that affects him to the point where when he comes out, his mental faculties are greatly affected. He's essentially handicapped himself at that point mentally. And realizing that what's going on with him, he finally just can't take it anymore. He takes a handful of pills, and they find him out in the field after he goes out wandering. Again, for anybody who doesn't know the Von Erich story, it's a very fucking heartbreaking story. And if you watch this film, just be prepared for a lot of nonsense and heartache, because that's what it comes down to. One of my favorite taglines of the film is their mother tried to, their mother tried to save them with religion. Their father tried to, I'm messing it up. No, sorry. Their mother tried to protect them with religion. The father tried to save them with wrestling. And I'm like, oof, man, that just, knowing what happened is just, So Mike takes his own life. Carrie, Von Erich, not too long after, suffers his own ordeal. So everybody, with the exception of Kevin at one point, are gone. There is a scene, I will say, that's very, very interesting if you watch the film, where you see Carrie Von Erich walking down a field, and he meets up with his other brothers. So he meets up with David and Mike, and it's like a depiction of him in heaven. It's a really weird, like, out of left field that just starts to happen. You're like, wait, are they really doing this? Because when you see the other brothers who've already passed in the film, and then they're talking about, it's great to see you again. They're hugging one another. They're happy. They're at peace. They're at rest. And then all of a sudden, Carrie looks over and sees a little boy and goes, "I guess you're my older brother," and picks him up and holds him, and it's just like, what am I watching? It was a very like odd but brave choice to try to depict the brothers in heaven. And apparently a lot of people reacted to this in different ways. From what I've read, mostly positively. And again, because of what befalls the family, you would like to think that the idea of rest and peace applies to them. So to see their characters at rest, it's just like, okay, I can see where you're going with this. But the story with Kevin is like the brother who is always trying to represent the family, trying to get his opportunity to go out there and hit the big time. And he got close at one point, but because it didn't go so well, they like took away the opportunity from him. And then he had to watch his brothers step up and step forward. Whether it wasn't, he wasn't good on the mic, or he just wasn't able to get it done in the ring, whatever the case is. Like, there's many, many factors that play into it. You see actors portray Harley Race and Ric Flair. Bruiser Brody at one point makes an appearance as far as the persona. And it was just watching like this little like snippet of wrestling history condensed. I was like, wow, this is a really, really interesting film. I can see why people were very intrigued by it, supportive of it. I mean, the wrestling community, let's face it, everybody was going out for like the red carpet event and enjoying it. And especially the Von Erich family was once again being talked about. But I was like, wow, this is crazy. One of my favorite parts of the film is that near the end, where they do like the follow-ups, where they talk about what happens to the family after the credits about to roll.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Von Erich starts talking to his wife. He goes, I just want to buy a farm and like invite all the family to come stay with us. At the end, they show this picture of like they eventually buy a farm with a large piece of land attached to it. And what happens? They invite family, and they have this large photo of Von Erich families just living at the farm. It's like, wow, that's fucking awesome. With everything else that happens in the film, you're like, okay, that works. But just the story of the Von Erichs is not an easy one to tell because of what happens to them, but I think they did a really, really good job with this one. It's not a feel-good movie. It's not like a summer blockbuster that you're going to go, yeah, let's fucking do this. By the time you get to the end of the film, you're like, wow, how does this all happen to one family? How, like, what's going on? And then again, they multiple times they play up the Von Erich curse. I think at one time they even mentioned how Kevin Von Erich gives his son his mom's maiden name, hoping to like dodge the curse, kind of thing.
Okay.
And at one point he can't come home. He doesn't feel safe coming home because he's afraid he's going to infect his family with the curse. And his wife's like, just come home. We need you. But it's like, wow, okay. Like, this is, I don't want to say it's the dark side of wrestling, because it's, again, we're playing up the idea of a curse here. But the idea of being on the road and going out and performing, or if you go overseas, that pulls you away from family. That pulls you away from loved ones. That pulls you away from holidays. That pulls you away from birthdays, special occasions, anniversaries. So I could see that scene where she's talking about just come home because they miss their husband. They miss their father. I was like, okay, that happens, unfortunately. That's something that's talked about and always referred to as, life on the road. But they don't play it as that. They play it as what the curse could potentially do to this family. He doesn't want it to wreak havoc on his loved ones in his own little family. And I'm just like, okay, this is really interesting. But by the time the film like wraps up and finishes, you're like, huh. Okay. it just like ends at one point. It has like a somewhat happy note at the very, very end. Like I said, because Kevin Von Erich is able to invite his family to come stay with him. And they show that little family reunion photo, which is really, really awesome. But at the same time, you're like, wow, this family went through a lot of shit. And let's also not forget to mention that Fritz Von Erich was very demanding of his sons. Pushed them very, very heavily, very hard, because it was something for him. He wanted to be the NWA champion, This is for anybody who doesn't follow the wrestling business. Fritz wanted the champion so badly that if he couldn't have it, he would make sure that one of his sons would capture it and bring it home.
Oh, okay.
That's the way it's depicted in the film. Like he even talks about it at one point. I think he was talking about it with David Von Erich or Kevin Von Erich at one point, where he says, I had the opportunity, it was mine for the taking, and they took it away from me. And so because of that, he wants to make sure that they go out there, they represent the family, they bring it home. So at the very least, the belt will be in this household. And I do believe it was Mike or David, one of them. I'm blanking right now. I'm one of the brothers eventually does end up capturing the belt, but because of their demise, they have to relinquish it. So just as quickly as they had it, they lost it. So it's just like, fuck. Oh, man. But yeah, that was always the thing of the father. Whenever he saw Fritz, he was always, wrestling's first. Let's talk about matches. Let's talk about the business. Let's talk about pushes. Let's talk about this and that. And it's just like never, hi, son, how you doing? Your boy's looking great. Or, how's the wife? None of that came first. Always wrestling. And it's like, wow, that must be fucking tiresome. Where the only thing somebody talks to you about is the business. So I can see how that would wear, especially on these guys all the time. And, just they did what they had to do. They wanted to make sure that their dad was proud of them. They wanted to make sure that they followed their, mom's rules as well as far as religion and everything else. But they did their best. And what happens to them? Oof. That's a tough one. But I would recommend watching it. Sit down and watch it. It's a fun one. Especially whether you follow the business or not, whether you know the family or not. It's an interesting story to watch unfold. Obviously, this is all condensed. I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes. So you take years of life in the business and in the family, and you're shrinking it down to this little time frame. But they did a good job. I was really, really surprised. And it's a reason why that film was being given some notoriety when it was coming out. It's not just for the wrestling crowd. It's for anybody out there who just wants to get some information and some history. So, yeah.
All right.
I'm trying to see. Let me see if I can look up the guys who were in this film. Because I want to say it was an A24 film.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And they've been having a lot of interesting choices recently. There's the other movie coming out with The Rock called The Smashing Machine.
Oh, about Mark Kerr.
Yeah, have you seen that one?
I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I read about it.
There's an image of The Rock online where he's sitting in a corner in the ring. And again, whatever they're doing to him as far as prosthetics or makeup, obviously they use makeup to cover up all the tattoos, so his complexion is a different color to begin with. But the tattoos are all gone, and they give him some kind of a hairpiece, which is a little off-putting because it's The Rock. But when you see his face, his facial structure, what the? That's not The Rock. They did some really interesting work on him to make sure that he looks the part. So let's see. Zac Efron, like I mentioned before, was Kevin Von Erich. Jeremy Allen White was Carrie. Harris Dickinson was David. Where's the other one? Why am I not seeing? Okay, Stanley Simons is Mike Von Erich. You did have Holt gosh, I can't pronounce this. McElhenney, thank you, is Fritz Von Erich.
Yep.
And he... Okay, a little personal story. Growing up, my father, for anybody out there wondering, anybody who's hasn't been listening long to the show, I am the youngest of three brothers. My older brothers were all into sports, wrestling, football, softball, whatever the case was. My father was a soccer player in some of the, I don't know if they're minor leagues, but he was in the league. And from what I've heard, because this is all before I was born, he was a really, really good player. But unfortunately, he got injured at some point in his career, and he could no longer play the game, but he then continued coaching the game. When my brothers got to a certain age, he pushed all of them, including me, to do sports. So soccer was something for them. I remember going to softball games for my brothers. I remember going to wrestling matches for my brothers. I remember my brothers being in the football team and all the nonsense that incurred because of like high school parties. Suffice to say, our house was the popular place to be whenever it came to parties. That's a whole other ball of wax. But my father always pushed and pushed and pushed. I remember the one time where I kept, getting frustrated because here's Saturday morning. I'm a kid in the 80s. And he's like, come on, we got to go, soccer practice. And finally he comes to me and goes, all right, I'm going to give you a choice. You can either go to soccer practice or you can stay home and watch cartoons. And I looked at him like, you're giving me a choice? He goes, yes, make your choice now. Do you want to go to soccer or do you want to stay home and watch cartoons? I was like, I want to stay home and watch cartoons. I made the choice that obviously he did not want to hear, but it upset him greatly. And my father and I had more than a few years of disputes because I didn't want to be like my brothers. I didn't want to follow in the footsteps. I didn't want to be on the wrestling team. I didn't want to be on the football team. I did both for a while. I just didn't like them. I took a different route. I ended up joining the drama club. And how many plays do you think my father came out to, Doug?
0.
You would be correct.
Well, that's a bummer.
It is. Don't get me wrong. It was something that I had noticed even when I was young that my father pushed so hard for sports and athletics, but when I went the artistic route, he was not having it. He was not happy with any of it. So I was like, fuck. And somebody's AC just kicked on. Pardon the sound if you can hear it in the background. But that's aside. I mean, I guess I can say by watching the Iron Claw, I can sympathize with the brothers because I know that hard ass mentality of you got to be the best, you got to push, you got to do this, you got to do that, whatever it takes. I've seen it. I've seen it with my brothers. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it in other people's lives when it comes to athletics. Like I remember watching one of the kids trying to make weight, and when he couldn't do it in one of the locker rooms of one of the high schools we were visiting, like the father was doing everything in his power to try to like get him to drop weight, whether it was get him to go to the bathroom more, find him gum so he could spit out whatever saliva, or make him sweat it out. I'm like, wow, like this is fucking intense. And the kid's got to lose like 7 pounds. I don't think you're gonna make it in like less than a half hour, dude. But it was like one of the things I'm familiar with it. So for me, I guess it kind of like transported me back to a point in my life. Granted, I'm talking about like high school sports, middle school sports, and here they're doing professional wrestling. But I was like, wow, the idea of just pushing somebody so hard that it drives a wedge between father and son. I was like, ugh, okay. It's an interesting take overall. Let's see. Oh, Chavo Guerrero was the Sheik. Some other people that I know we talked about this one before when it was coming out, that there was other talent from the industry that was playing parts in this movie.
Yes. MJF had a role in it as well.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't see him prominently, to be honest. And I honestly don't remember seeing Chavo at all. But maybe he had the hood over him, and I didn't realize it was him. Yeah, he was in there. Somebody just Lance. That's the character he plays. I'm not entirely sure who that was, but there was a whole bunch of different things. So if you're a fan of wrestling history, it's definitely a fun watch in that respect. And then if you're a fan of just dramatic storytelling, in this case, based on a true story. And again, for anybody who watches stuff like this, if you're going for historical points, yes, they messed with a few things here and there just to make the story work for the big screen. So not everything is 100% accurate. Take that with a grain of salt. You are watching a movie after all, so they have to make a few changes here and there. It happens. But if A24 continues to do stuff like this with the film with The Rock coming up, they've made some really, really interesting choices when it comes to films. And I guess that's why A24 is becoming more and more popular. And whenever they put a film out, people are like, oh, you know, there's already some buzz around it. So make sure you watch it just in case. So,
yeah, all right.
Good stuff from there. Anything else? Like, I'm trying to think of like what else has been going on recently.
I went to the theaters yesterday.
Ooh, what did you go to the theater for?
I went to go see In a Violent Nature.
Oh, fuck. Okay. That's right. We were talking about it last time. It was coming out soon.
Yes,
And
it came out last Friday.
what is the verdict, sir? Oh, no.
This movie has a runtime of 1 hour, 34 minutes. You could easily shave an hour off of it, and it would be a decent short.
That doesn't sound very good.
It wasn't. I went to go see it with a friend of mine. When we walked out of the theater, we both went to the bathroom, and then we were both standing there in the hallway, and we both had lots of thoughts. So we went and stood outside and ranted and raved. I was throwing David Lee Roth high kicks while she was smoking cigarettes. And it was here just to walk anybody through who's curious about the film. So this is a Canadian film. It was made, I think, either last year or in 2022. Basically, the story is a bunch of idiot assholes go camping up in a remote region, and they hear about a local legend about how there was a series of grisly murders at a logging camp. Somewhere along the way, they go and they're checking out the ruins of the logging camp and this observation tower that was near it. And they find a medallion, or a locket, pardon me. So one of the guys is like, I'll take the locket for myself. So he takes it, and then, of course, out of the ground crawls the corpse of somebody who was involved with one of the families at the logging camp, who's basically a revenant. It's basically Jason, when you really get down to brass tacks. Even the character's name is Johnny. And he crawls out of the ground, and the camera starts following him as he walks through the woods. And he walks through the woods. He walks through the woods some more. He continues walking through the woods. There's a lot of walking in this fucking movie, man.
Okay.
There's some interesting stuff in there. It's basically a deconstruction of how horror films work. But at the end of the day, they really just beat us over the head with, it's like, well, we're going to show him walking here, we're going to show him walking there, we're going to show him walking over here, and we're going to walk over there, and we're going to walk some more over here. And they cut so little out. I'll give you a good idea. So in one of the scenes, not to give away any spoilers, but one character who encounters the undead killer is he gets roughed up and paralyzed. So the undead killer drags him into a shed. And do you ever see those log splitter machines with like the hydraulic thing on it so it splits the logs in half super easy?
Yes.
Okay, so they got one of those. And, of course, the killer fires it up and then hits the lever so the blade on it slowly extends to the end of it, split a log in half, so you see what happens. And then he pulls the crank in the other direction, so it basically the blade pulls itself back to the other end of the log splitting machine. And they didn't cut any of this out. They basically showed you every agonizing moment of the slow-ass thing moving in one direction or another. Oh, and then he proceeds to use it to start dismembering the person who was paralyzed. And once again, they cut nothing out. They're showing everything in step by agonizing step. At first, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And after a while, it got real old real quick. So there's elements of a good movie in there, but there's a lot of junk. We came up to the conclusion that the guy who wrote and directed it, because I believe it's the same guy who wore both hats, he's either trolling the horror fans, or he is so far up his own ass, he was convinced, he's like, whoa, I just turned the entire horror world on its ear and like helped reinvent the genre. And I don't think either of those things were accomplished with this movie. Yeah, so it's not great. If anybody out there is going to watch it, wait until it's on streaming so you have a fast forward button handy. You can easily get this one down to 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes without trying, and then you'll have much more of a satisfactory experience. There's also a lot of instances where you could tell where they were cutting the budget, because there were a lot of kills that they just didn't bother showing. And of course, there's a lot of people are talking about the yoga kill, and that's pretty much like the famous kill of the movie, or the one that's going to be like the most notable.
The yoga kill?
Yeah.
Can
He takes out a girl doing yoga in a pretty graphic way.
Like, makes her into a pretzel?
He basically, yes.
Okay.
I won't go into the details of exactly what is done, but it's pretty, takes her apart in an interesting way.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Enticement to watch the movie for maybe for one scene.
I'm sure that will be out on the internet sometime in the next days and weeks. It's supposed to be coming to Shudder sometime this fall. So yeah, wait for, if anybody out there is thinking about watching it, once again, I would reiterate, watch it on streaming.
There was I don't know what movie it was from. I want to say it was from Hatchet.
Okay.
But there's a scene that gets, on social media, it pops up here and there. And if you're like scrolling through the videos or the reels, and it's a guy and a girl out in the woods, and the girl's all horny, and the guy and the girl are starting to go at it doggy style. And then the killer pops out from behind and lops the guy's head off, but his body convulses as he's still in the throes of having intercourse. To which the girl has no clue what's happened, but when she finally turns around and looks, because the body starts to slow down, and she realizes the guy has no head, and then she tries to run or crawl at this point, half naked in the woods. Then the killer catches up with her and just takes her out. I'm just like, okay, that was an interesting scene. I don't know what movie it belongs to. Like I said, it may be one of the Hatchet films, but I was like, But that scene's popped up more than a few times on my algorithm, to which I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what the algorithm's trying to tell me. But like, there's something to be said about creative scenes when people get taken out. Like, I remember Jason X is very, very popular because of some of those scenes, especially the one where I think it's like the first kill, isn't it? The girl who's in the lab, and also when Jason is revived. Spoilers. And he grabs her and slams her head into the liquid nitrogen, and then slams her face onto the lab table and just goes everywhere.
That's the first kill in When You Get to the Future.
Okay, so yeah, right there. So that's creative. That's very, like, memorable as far as a kill in a horror film. So it's always like, how do you come up with something that's going to stand out? That's not going to just be a throat slashed, a head cut off, or impaled on whatever implement. Just trying to find a way to make it new and, fresh. I guess you can say, I don't know. But there definitely has to be some kind of creativity as to how you do that. That one scene like I talked about in the woods with the two people. Now I'm curious about this yoga scene, but there's always like one or two scenes from these type of films that stands out to where, like, oh, did you catch this one? Or, he catch, he used the leaf blower or whatever the case is. You're like, what the, how would you, never mind. I'll watch it. But okay. Well, it's unfortunate because I remember we were talking about it a couple times here and there, and I had watched the trailer and it looked interesting, but remember, folks, trailers are there to sell you the better parts of the film. And when you sit down and watch the film, you may or may not get that effect fully played out for you. Sometimes they fall short. I'm trying to remember what film it was. Somebody was talking about it recently, that they watched the film and like the trailer was amazing, and when they watched the film, the film was garbage.
These things happen, unfortunately. It's by the time you figure it out, though, they got your money already. So it is what it is.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just unfortunate that you're telling me like there is so much walking. Like,
oh yeah.
I get the feeling that maybe when they were doing filming, maybe they realized that they weren't getting enough footage and they had to maybe fill in some gaps here and there. And maybe just having the killer go through the woods was a good way to add, ratchet up the tension because, he's coming. But, All right. Well,
also interesting because there is no music in the movie either.
Really? Like, not like even like a car or a radio or nothing like that?
Well, there's like at one point like a car drives by and you can hear like they're listening to like metal or something like that.
Okay.
But no, there's no score to it.
Okay. No ambience to it.
No, the only stuff you hear is because they're wandering around. Everybody's walking around the goddamn forest. You hear insects, birds, and that kind. The sounds of forest during the summertime, and that's all you hear.
I wonder what. I wonder if that was a budgetary choice or just an artistic choice.
Probably artistic choice, because then they decided to have like a wacky acoustic folk song at the end of the movie during the closing credits.
Okay, I have a way to instantly make this film a lot better for you, Doug.
How's that?
Take the scenes where Johnny, you said is the killer's name?
Yes.
Take the scenes where he's walking, which apparently is a good chunk of the film, and just score it to the goat and your mom. Just have that play in the background every time as he's walking. Try maybe sync it up to his footsteps. For anybody who doesn't know, and again, if you haven't been listening to the show for a long time, Goat and Your Mom. Go look it up. You're welcome. Not safe for work.
Not safe for life.
Well, that's debatable. Come on, you guys are trying to get him for my bachelor party at one point.
And I did spend money to go see him at a bar in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by drunken morons. So,
wait, did you?
Yeah, back in 2017.
Wow. Why does this seem like the first time I'm hearing this?
I don't know. It was like May of 2017. I went up north to go. I think I went to go visit my father or something like that, and it was like midweek, and I knew Goat and Your Mom was playing at a bar up in northern PA. So I went up that way, and I checked in with somebody I know up that way, and was like, anybody want to watch this shit, or anybody want to go? And like one of my buddies was like, I got nothing going on, let's go check it out. So we went to this like shitty hick bar, and the crowd was about as useless as you can imagine.
All right. How much were tickets?
I'm trying to remember how much it was to get in. I don't remember.
Was it more than $20?
I don't think it was. I don't think it was any more than like 10 or 15, to be honest with you.
Okay, fair enough. And was the bar like busy, or were they just, it was like a slow place?
It was a nothing special bar. It was like one of the deals where it's like in the front area you got the bar itself, and you got a couple of tables, and then you go towards the back, and they have like a couple other tables that had been moved off to the side, and they had like a makeshift stage in this like secondary room. You could tell it was like the kind of area where like people would just like go hang out back there and like throw darts or whatever, or
gotcha.
Just fuck off and hang out and shit like that. And it was. I think the highlight of the evening was when somebody in the crowd just randomly yells "White Power," and
God,
because this was a piece of shit hick bar. No fucking word of lies. And the drummer of Goat and Your Mom goes, "No man, Red Power," to which everybody just kind of like looked at him like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And he goes, "Oh, Red Power, that's Satan."
God.
And then they started playing the next song, and I was like, "Well, that might have been the most fucking stupid interaction I've ever seen in my life."
They need to work on their crowd work.
On the bright side, they played all their. Of course, they closed with "Can You Quack," and they even had some lady in the audience come up front and held a tambourine while Goat would bounce his cock off the tambourine in tune with the song.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, and that's like part of their shtick. That's like just what they kind of do at all their whenever they're doing their shows and stuff like that. So, yep.
Now on Apple Music, Can You Quack? I wonder if it's on there actually. Hold on.
What? I don't know.
All right.
I will say this. One of the funniest things in the world to me is if you remember Tosh.0, Peter Tosh's TV show from some years back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the episode where he watches their performance in like somebody's backyard, and they're talking about it, and they even have like the lyrics on screen, and they have like the entire crowd singing along with them. And at one point, Tosh just goes, "This guy's asking all the right questions."
Okay, Doug, I know you have an iPhone.
This is true.
If you go into Apple Music and you type in "goat," it will finish it for you and say "Goat and Your Mom." And if you click on "Goat and Your Mom" artist, that's questionable. Quack Like a Duck is listed in Apple Music.
Well, there we go. Holy shit.
So, I don't want to. I'm afraid. For anybody who has not heard of Goat and Your Mom, it's an acquired taste. It has come up a couple times in this show. Check it out. We warn you. Make sure that you're alone, or at least with somebody who can get a joke. And we'll just leave it at that. How's that?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, investigate that at your own. You do what you will.
At your own peril. All right, sir. I think we've done it for the night. Anything else to add?
No, I think we covered more than enough ground.
All right. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez here along with...
I'm Doug.
And we are the Rabblecast.